Todd, it's great to connect today. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Appreciate you having me, Nate.
Sadly, I first learned about your week. Sadly, I first learned about your work just 1 week ago, and I was so intrigued. I reached out. So I'm grateful that you and your team were able to get this scheduled so quickly. And as we think about the work that you've done on performance, what have you learned that you would most like to pass on to others?
Well, so a little bit of context. I've owned a peak performance and mental game coaching and training company now for almost 30 years and became known for really one very specific concept and method that is, allowed me to work with people like Kobe Bryant and Cristiano Ronaldo and big names in Hollywood. And that is the one thing I'd pass along is the power of using your identity um, in a useful way to help you reach the ambitions that you most want. The tool that I would give people is building an alter ego or a secret identity or a persona or a character to help them go and that's custom built to help them in a very specific role or area of their life. And the power in that I've discovered over the 25 years that I've been specifically honing my expertise in the world of alter egos and identity is how it unlocks a very creative and playful side of us, which goes back to something that we're very much rooted in when we're children. That's why kids stay very much locked in a flow state and a zone state when they're very young. It's because their creative imagination is, which is sort of seated in the theta brainwave state. They're most caught in that, and they have no sense of me and self, and they play with characters and personas and jumping off of a sofa as if they're the Black Panther or Wonder Woman, or they're in the driveway 20 minutes later being their favorite sports hero. There's no me. And yet, when we get older, we start to craft an identity and a picture of what we think that we are and what we can do. And that's not really what our great superpower is. We can shift and we can form and or morph, and an alter ego is a very, very powerful way to go about making that happen.
Okay, so how do you teach people to use the alter ego?
Well, one is just like there's no you, like there's no one Nate, there's no one version of Todd. There's many versions that we have. Like there, how I show up to my three kids as dad. I've got some specific traits and attributes that I try to bring to being a good father. And then with my wife, different. And then the CEO of my companies, but then also the author. And then when I'm speaking on stages, there's different forms of me. And so the first step in that whole process of helping someone develop a new sense of themselves is to pick a very specific role or area of their life that they either want to pursue or they're struggling with right now. And so that's the first step is pick a role, pick an area of your life that you would like to create a transformation inside of. Because if you're struggling with it, well, that means that the current version of you that you're bringing to it isn't really built to win in it. Whether you like to admit it or not, it's just not built to win. Well, let's build something else that's custom built to go and win in that particular area for you. And that is, there's nothing wrong in that because what's rooted behind it that helps to drive it forward is that you're being very intentional. You're the one who's deciding how you want to show up in that area, which is a very, very powerful frame to be taking into, using your creative imagination this way.
Okay, so as an example, I'm thinking of like Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba.
Mm-hmm.
Is that is that the like kind of prototypical example of a basketball player using the alter ego?
It's most well-known alter ego, I'd say, probably of all time. Yeah, absolutely. The danger that people would have in that using only that frame is that not every alter ego is going out there to be super intense. Or the other mistake is that they think that it's only for people in sports, or it's only for people who are standing on a stage and singing or something like that. That's not true because we all have roles that take us into, all the different areas of our lives. But absolutely. And as the person who built out the Black Mamba with Kobe, the Black Mamba was born because of him going through an extremely um, difficult time in his career when he was going through his trial, and he was feeling like he was losing a sense of self. Really, what he said when he came to me was, "I feel like I'm losing my edge." And I said to him, "You're not losing your edge. You're going through an ego death right now, because whatever sense or sense of self that you had before is broken. It's not going to be the version of you going forward. And the longer that you try to hold on to that identity, the longer you're going to stay caught in a purgatory." And and so that gave us the opportunity to now, from those ashes of that experience, instead of him living through an innocent archetype, which is kind of what he was living through at the time, is build something brand new, not for his entire life. I wasn't there to help fix all the legal issues and things like that. That was, he's got other people for that. But I was there to help build the version of him that he would take onto that court so he could continue to perform through the skills that he already had and develop even more along the way. So to pull that back to the listener, to someone like, if you're transitioning from a graduate student to an associate professor or a professor, well, the graduate student isn't built to be the professor yet. Like, there's still, like, if you go and you interview the best professors, or if you think back to about all your best professors, what are the qualities and attributes and traits that they have? And then you can use that as a picture in your own mind of what you'd like to move towards more quickly. Or if you're going through the transition of a divorce, right? Well, that whole, like, part of your identity is built around you coupled with the other person. Well, who's the new version of you? What's that going to look like? And so this tool that I, talk about and built out in the Alter Ego Effect book is just an incredibly powerful device to help people move through challenging times, difficult times, or even exciting times, using a model that is very, very quick for them to implement.
One of the things that I think is so interesting about this alter ego effect is how amazing and how weird it can seem, just depending on how we phrase it. Because if you're to say, like, I want to mimic and adopt all of the best traits and qualities of person X that I admire, that would seem totally normal and reasonable. And everybody would say, yes, of course, we should do that. And then if we say, I want to develop this alter ego, well, that maybe will feel like inauthentic. And so, for example, I teach business students and leadership. And if I tell somebody, like, develop an alter ego that you can deploy when you're in these stressful situations, whatever, they might say, like, well, I thought the point of leadership is like being authentic, right? And so, what is the relationship between authenticity, inauthenticity, and the alter ego?
Well, I like to break the frame of what authenticity is for a lot of people, because it's now a word that's used, I think, largely in culture because of social media, to posture, that, oh, look at me, aren't I so authentic? And I have so much authenticity in the way that, and it's like, no. What's authentic is when someone has an idea of what they want to move towards, or they have an idea about, this is the way that I want to show up in life. I don't want to stay muted because of the fact that I play Mr. or Mrs. Nice Guy all the time. You've overvalued something. There's nothing authentic about that when you don't get your voice out into the world. So when I'm talking about, that's why you know, there's the idea of alter egos, which have been around since 44 BC, because Cicero is the person who originally named it in a letter to a friend. And in its root form, it means the other I, or trusted friend within. So the alter ego's purpose is to create a picture and a model in your mind, which, by the way, biologically, physiologically, we need pictures. If you don't create a vision of something, then it's going to be very difficult for a team, a person, a family, an organization to move towards something. There's no picture that's there. Well, then alter ego is a picture. It's a model for what you would like to move towards. And it, the other I, or trusted friend within, is core concept. Now, some people can use alter egos and it be negative. Well, of course, but that's like everything in life. Can money be used to be negative? Of course it can. Can water? Of course it can. You could drown inside of it. Can the sun only be positive? Nothing's only positive. But that's what's the power in the methodology that I unpack for people is because you're the one who's building it. It's not forced on you. And if you're using an alter ego as some mechanism to help you impress others or to deceive others, well, then of course there's a toxicity in its purpose. But if you're using it as a model to help you move towards what you would more like to be or evolve skills and traits, then there's a lot of power in that. And that's being very authentic because you know that some of these traits are hidden within you. That should be a recognition that people have that we're all born with these different traits and energy because traits, characteristics, attributes are energy. Now we need to bring them to life. How do we bring them to life? Well, you could try to stack those things onto the sense of self that you already have, but I know how many different psychological little spider webs or strings that it plucks that causes people to become avoidant with it because, you know what, I can't see myself doing it. No one from my city has ever gone on to be able to go and do that, or from my town. But when we develop the alter ego, maybe the alter ego could do that.
Yeah. So this makes me think of a number of things. One of them that I teach in leadership is that we shouldn't be authentic to ourselves so much as we should be authentic to what the task requires and then use our capabilities to do what the task requires. And that's what the best leaders do. And then I was thinking about how, 30 years ago, these bracelets become popular, WWJD. For Christians, this became a very popular thing. And it's the alter ego, right? I mean, what would
Yeah.
Jesus do? Like, I'm just asking myself, what would this model of a person that, as in the case of Christian, they're striving to be like, what would they do? And I'm going to try and mimic that. And then the last thing I'll say that one reason why I loved your work when I came across it and was so intrigued is because I had experienced it in a limited way, and I want to keep experimenting with it and try it in more situations. So I play video games. I love
Yeah.
video games, and so my favorite game is Fortnite. And one thing I noticed that helped me is rather than play the way I wanted to play, I would think to myself, what would Peterbot do in this situation? Now, of course, I can't do what Peterbot does in all things, but I did find that like if I played the way I wanted to play, often I was more passive, was more careful. But if I thought, what would Peterbot do? I actually found that it seemed like I don't have like hard data on this, but it seemed like I started performing much, much better.
Yeah. And if you have any sort of biofeedback on the human brain set up when you start to act through or think through the idea of someone or something else, there's different parts of your brain that start to get activated. Like
Interesting.
the creative seat of your brain starts to get more amplified in its activity because you're disassociating. And disassociation can be, become a disorder in people. But that's again, the disorder is ruling the person. In this case, the alter ego, the power in it is we're disassociating from the idea of what we think we can and cannot do, which by the way, at our core, our sense of self is just an idea
Yeah.
that you keep on believing or acting through or behaving through. So, in the work that I've done and we've done inside of my company for, 30 years almost, is helping people to disassociate from a bad idea that isn't going to help them go and exactly like you said, the task at hand. Like, what's the task at hand? What's the role that I is going to that I'm tackling right now? And yeah, it's not surprising that you immediately change the way that you go about playing when you start to ask yourself that question. And that's a great example of just one of the kind of tenets or core ideas that's nested inside of, the entire method that I walk through people in the book.
What has surprised you most as you have learned about and taught the alter ego?
Um, just how many different forms it's taken with people. Like I originally started it, of course, with athletes, and then over time, people would start to say to me, "You know what? I actually use it. I never worked out in my life, and so I built a fitness alter ego, and
Interesting.
I lost 28 pounds, and this is from someone who has never been in a gym before, but probably the best one that is one of the more rewarding ones was this lady who listened to a lot of my podcasts, and her son highly autistic, where he was nonverbal as well and had never spoken really any words up until the age of 5 or 6. Read it, and she thought about how she could maybe use it with her son. And he's a big Spider-Man fan. So she bought him a Spider-Man's costume and he put it on. And immediately, by taking on the persona and the character of Spider-Man, started to articulate and talk.
Wow.
And so they took it a step further. They built out his entire bedroom into Spider-Man's lair. And he would take refuge in it. And he was in the special needs side of the school system. She followed up with me about 4 years after my book was out. So about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And she said, "Hey, Todd, I just wanted to follow up. I know that we had met because she had come to one of my book signings in San Diego." And she said, "He's no longer in the special needs side. He's in the regular part of the schooling." A part of the process, though, was he now had language to describe things to us. One of them being that the enemy within was the Incredible Hulk. And so sometimes he'd come out of his room and he would say, "Mom, today's a Hulk day." And what she knew was on Hulk days, when she would play music in the car, they usually would play music on the way to school, but it would trigger him. So it gave him language, and
Oh,
the
interesting.
Spider-Man persona allowed him to evolve into the kid. He would actually wear originally the Spider-Man costume to school. Now he doesn't wear the Spider-Man costume anymore. He's now standing on the top of his own traits,
Yeah.
built through borrowing the identity of Super Spider-Man. I mean, that's just one example, and that's a kid, but adults have the exact same capability within us.
Yeah, this is just so interesting to me because it's like everybody would agree that we get to choose to be the people we want to be. I mean, yeah, of
Yeah,
course we're limited by some factors. Like I can never be LeBron James because I'm too short, but within reason. Like we
there's
get to
genetics
choose who
involved.
we
Yeah,
are. Yeah, of course.
yeah.
And so I love the idea of like, okay, well, what kind of business leader do I want to be? What kind of spouse, partner do I want to be? What kind of child, neighbor, friend, employee? And we can go down the list. And so do you encourage, like, should I be thinking of an alter ego for each of these things? Because on one hand, it's like, yeah, maybe we already have a model. And so maybe we're kind of like trying to
Yeah.
model these behaviors. But does it make sense to like really think about an alter ego for each of these domains of life?
You don't need to have, I mean, the way they like to tell people is, does everyone need an alter ego? No, you don't need an alter ego. But what I do know is that the highest performing, most capable people in different disciplines of life have a really powerful set of tools around their tool belt. Even talking to you before, the reason why this podcast started for you was because you wanted to be able to pass down some of the things that you had learned in your career to the students that were coming up, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so now taking that idea, well, you could have a few different alter egos that you play with. And do you need to have one across every domain of your life? No. And in fact, it would be just overwhelming, I think, because we can't all crush it in every single area of our life. But I would say start with one. If you're the person who doesn't, is always scared of presenting or speaking in front of people, well, maybe that's the opportunity. Like there's an alter ego that could be born for that specific thing. And then what happens is, like anything, you get reacquainted with the idea. And I say reacquainted because you've already used this when you were a kid. We already played with these
Yeah.
tools when we were kids. You're just sort of flexing the muscle of your creative imagination again, which then is going to carry on into probably another role or another area of your life. And then all of a sudden, you can hold a few of these different identities at the same time, but be very intentional with when you switch between them. Because there is no one alter ego that's going to run all of your life. That's one of the big traps that
Mhm.
people would use. Like it's the same concept as having a single self. There is no one single self. We have many selves operating in many different areas. And this only helps to honor what is a truism.
This is interesting to me for so many reasons, but one of those is because this is just grounded in identity theory, which has been shown for decades to be a very powerful theory that predicts behavior. And there's a lot of work on identity theory. Well, Todd, any final things you'd like to share as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I would just say like, I mean, at the root and the core of what makes this concept so powerful is there's an attitude of playfulness with it, right? Like not everyone goes out and shares their alter ego. Um, Kobe Bryant, we built it in 2003, formalized it in 2004 in the springtime, and then when it became the actual Black Mamba, that wasn't what the original alter ego was. But he didn't reveal it to the world for 5 years. He played with it. Most alter egos you'll never hear about because it's a personal device to help you form your own thinking in the way that you want to show up. Um, but at the core of what makes it powerful is there's an attitude of playfulness and fun that's there. And I don't think it's anyone would deny the truth that we could probably use a lot more playfulness and fun and relaxed approach to the way that all of us, work through life. So that's one of the core things that makes the idea so powerful.
Great approach, great idea. Well, like I said, I just came across your work recently, but I'm excited to continue to learn more. Grateful for your time. I look forward to buying your book and really digging into this over the coming days and weeks. So thanks so much for sharing your lesson with me today, Todd.
Thanks, Nate.